Hi there, are you interested in AI agents and MCP? Well, this video is for you. We're going to look at a practical demo about how we can introduce better MCP security.
But wait, there's more. We're also going to be showcasing the Microsoft NLWeb tool, which will ultimately lead us to a use case for securely connecting to the agentic web. So this is NLWeb, and it turns any private website into a chat interface. We're also going to be looking at OpenAI's Playground, where we have a new capability to add MCP remote servers, and we're going to show you how to add them where we have authentication. So we're going to look at getting details about authenticated users. And we're also going to be looking at how we can connect the OpenAI platform Playground chat to the NLWeb from Microsoft, which is a first. So in this particular video, we're going to show you how to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect to using our secure MCP gateway. We're going to add in here, showing you how to add the NLWeb MCP gateway to OpenAI, and that allows us then to get OpenAI to be able to use a set of tools that can securely connect in over our MCP gateway into our NLWeb installation. And here we have a question where we're asking into the private data that we have inside an NLWeb, and it's now going to display the information which comes from internal network sources, and you see it's getting displayed here. So we have a lot to show you in this, so we're going to dive in, and hopefully there's something here you're interested in as we move forward.
As you know, over the last few weeks and months, there has been some stories about security vulnerabilities about MCP. The MCP protocol is a very good protocol, in my opinion. It has built in a lot of security features, but just like any communications protocol, it's how it's deployed can lead to security vulnerabilities. And that's the same for any communication protocol. In this particular video, we're going to look at how we can address some of those security vulnerabilities by using what's called an MCP gateway. So the MCP gateway will help companies connect securely to the agentic web. So an MCP client will normally talk to an MCP server, and currently at the moment there are a number of ways to deploy an MCP server. Most examples you see out there at the moment use what's called STDIO, which means that both the MCP client and the MCP server have to be located on the same host, and they use STDIO to communicate between the client and the server. But what's happening recently is that there's a lot more move towards remote MCPs. So this is where you might have an MCP client embedded in a AI agent that is publicly accessible on the web. Say, for example, Windsurf, Cursor, Claude Desktop, Claude Code. And there's even some early indications that an MCP client will be built into OpenAI. And so an MCP client can connect to MCP servers, but what this particular video shows is that there's a need for what's called an MCP gateway, and this provides a publicly accessible URL or endpoint that the MCP client can access, but then the MCP gateway then provides secure tunneling to the MCP servers that may be, residing within a company's internal network. And also, the authentication and authorization can be offloaded from the MCP servers to the MCP gateway, so that can take care of integration with an identity provider such as Google or Okta or Auth0, any of the major authentication providers. And then this allows us to provide identity and access control, so MCP servers can validate and authenticate the users that are coming into them. It allows us to provide network infrastructure security, and crucially what it allows us to do is to provide threat detection and responses, so we can do a lot of security treatment at the edge before the traffic comes in to the into the internal network. So this will allow companies to securely connect to the agentic web. So this isn't just a theoretical architecture. We've actually built this in a proof of concept. And this is using some of the best-in-class open source projects that are out there at the moment. You probably are aware of some of these particular projects. The main one is Traffic, which is a reverse proxy solution. This is the heart of the solution. And this is a very large open source project, which is used both for small and medium enterprises, developer networks, and also they've extended into enterprise with an enterprise support tier and enterprise products. And on top of Traffic, we have a open source product called Pangolin, which is a newer open source project which is gaining a lot of attention at the moment, and that allows us to provide tunneling from the public internet back in through our private MCP servers that are residing on our private network. And the best way to describe Pangolin, it's similar to Cloudflare tunnels. So if you've ever used Cloudflare tunnels, you'll be familiar with what Pangolin provides. And then also Pangolin then provides a tunneling mechanism to secure the paths to the internal servers using what's called WireGuard. And part of the solution, we've also built some additional components that sit alongside the Traffic component, which provides authentication to external authentication providers or IDPs, and also a middleware manager, which provides the ability to apply the different configurations very quickly, but advanced configurations to the security gateway. So this is Security Gateway. I'm going to give you a real example of what we're going to do. So in this particular video series, we're going to look at a number of things. So obviously, we're going to look at a remote server that's running on the web. So we have a remote server, and this is just going to have a very basic streamable HTTP MCP server, which basically is just going to return back to the AI agent who's the logged in user. So it's going to have a function called get logged in user, which will return back the credentials or the email of a logged in user. And then also what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate a running of a local MCP server. So there's a really interesting project at the moment called Microsoft NLWeb, Natural Language Web. And if you look it up, I'll leave a link in the description. It's a really exciting project which allows companies to now take more control of how they are going to use AI on their own private data. So it allows them to build up a database, a structured database of their data from lots of different internal sources, and to provide a ChatGPT-like interface to that data and restrict access to it. So it removes the problem they have about data leaking from their company being used by AI agents or other crawlers, and they have more control over that. So this is a project called NLWeb. At the moment, this is a local solution, so you deploy it locally within your company. So what we're going to do is we're going to show how we can deploy an MCP security gateway, which will take care of authentication, and it'll take care of intrusion detection, and also a web application firewall. And it allows us to demonstrate that we can go and apply these security policies and security framework to take away the complexity from the MCP servers. So the MCP servers can be developed by developers who know how to develop and work with their data and their tools, and the security then can be offloaded to a specialized open source project which can provide the best-in-class security. And the best thing about this is that all of these products are totally free and it's deployed by security professionals all over the web. So hopefully if you join me in this video series, I'll show you in detail how we're going to set all of this up. You may have heard of a company called Render, which provide a way to go and spin up public accessible servers. And what I've done is I have gone and created some MCP test servers, and these test servers come from the Python SDK from the Model Context Protocol. And I've added one or two additional ones just to show us how to use this. And in this particular repo, I'll put the link in the notes as well. We can just push this repo straight onto render and run it as a test server. So we have this test server that's running, and that's accessible on this particular URL. Okay, so we're ready to go. So I'm just going to paste this into Inspector and just hit connect. Okay, we've just connected to our application, MCP application, which is running on render. And if I just list the tools here, you can see I have a number of tools. This particular one here is the most interesting one. It returns a logged in user. Now, obviously, we're just connecting directly, so there is no logged in user here. So we're obviously connecting directly from the AI agent to the remote MCP server. So we're going to now place an MCP security gateway in front of our remote server, and this will allow us to do things like authentication, intrusion detection, the whole gamut of the web application firewall. So that's going to be placed in there. So how we'll do this is using Pangolin. So we have Pangolin, we're going to log in here. So I'm just going to log into my dashboard. If I go into my resources, I've already created one for the test MCP server here to show you what I've done. So we have a URL here called testmcp at mcp.gateway.online, and that is proxying to our host on render. And this is just literally proxying through our MCP gateway here. Now, just proxying through, just it's not that exciting. What we want to do is we want to using a project that some of us have been working on over the last few months called the middleware manager. We can apply middlewares to the traffic reverse proxy, which underpins the security gateway. So if we look at the test MCP gateway online, we haven't applied any of the middlewares to it. So what we're going to do is going to attach a middleware. We're going to attach a security chain. What this does is does some magic around course headers. It redirects to make sure that it sends back a 401 to the client because it's not authenticated, and it redirects any requests for the well-known authorization server metadata to a central place which gets managed, and then it enforces the MCP authentication. So that's now applied. So if we look here, when we go and we click on that, we now have 401. So it's sending a 401 back. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this URL and we're going to go to our MCP inspector here. We're going to go and disconnect. And what you'll see here now is a 401 unauthorized should come back to the MCP inspector, which will then kick off a authorization here, and it started to here, it's authorization, and it's sending the user to the Google, which that's what I have set up here for this particular demo as the OAuth provider. So we're going to log in with our email, and we're going to go and accept the terms. And when we get put back here, okay, so then now when we have fully authenticated, we have the list of tools here. So we're just going to list our tools. And then here you see now we have done the full authentication. So if we get the logged in user, we should now see that we have the information that we require. So we're going to go through the flow using the authorization debug tool in the MCP inspector. So we click on this button here, we go in and we can actually go through the flow, which is really good to see what's actually happening. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to request the metadata. So this happens because a 401 was sent back to the inspector, and that metadata comes back from the MCP security gateway. Then we're going to do the client registration. So the client has been registered. Then we're going to do is pair authorization, and that provides us with a link which goes to our identity provider, which is Google. So I'm just going to go and authenticate with Google, and then that gives us the authorization code, which we can go and paste back in to the debugging tool here, and then request our token, and then we have our authorization code. So we have it all here ready for us to go. So we can use this in other particular AI agents that don't have OAuth built in, we can use the authorization code. If we use authentication, here we can offload the authentication but still provide the information using headers back to our remote MCP server. But what also is more powerful about it, we can also introduce additional middlewares here. And so, for example, I'll just go through some middlewares here. So we can use IP whitelisting, so we can specify some certain IPs that we want. Rate limiting. We could use geo-blocking. So one I want to draw your attention to is CrowdSec. So CrowdSec is a really, really powerful plugin which provides intrusion detection and web application firewall, and it detects a lot of patterns there. So particularly for like tool poisoning and things like that, it can be particularly useful. So if we have a look at the login into Go CrowdSec console login, just going to show you the login to CrowdSec. So you can see here we have a particular dashboard, so we can get to see any of these particular issues that have happened. So if we have any sort of issues that have happened, any decisions that were made with, we can display captures. If we feel it's like a bot that's attacking us, there's alerts. And I'll just give you an example of a particular alert that can be caught here. Say, for example, if I were to go and look for .m, so a common injection is that we look for .m, and sometimes developers store confidential secrets in .m. So if I do this here, you can see this is immediately rejected by CrowdSec. So this is like a typical attack that's been rejected there. Okay. So that's how we use the Web Security Gateway, or the MCP Security Gateway, to go and front existing remote MCPs. But we've also got a case where we might have local MCPs, and the example I want to use here is the Microsoft project called NLWeb. This has been quite popular on the web at the moment, and if you look at NLWeb, what it is, it provides like a chat bot type of interface that can sit internally in a company's own infrastructure, and all the data that the company has can be used to interact and search by users, which is really, really great, and it gives more control back to end users, or more control back to companies. So this is the interface there. I just asked it a while about what does Kevin Scott, who's the CTO of Microsoft, what does he say about MCP? And it gave us a nice answer here, and pulled in some of the articles that we have stored in the internal database. So that's our local MCP server. So it runs locally. How can we expose it on the web? Well, what we could do is, we have already done this with Pangolin here. If I look at the resources, I have set up a particular endpoint here called nlweb.mcpgateway.online, and that has been tunneled back over my WireGuard tunnel back to my laptop, which is running NLWeb on port 8910. And that's how I'm able to go and interact using this particular website. Now, we could decide to block that for certain bots, for certain IP addresses, anything we can do that I showed you before we could do. But what I've also done is I've provided another resource, which is a MCP access to this. So I've called it NLWeb MCP. So if I look here, this is going again back to my laptop, where I have a MCP server that's running right beside the NLWeb, which provides access to the NLWeb. So what we're going to do is, we're going to then go and connect our gateway here, so we can again go and get an AI agent to speak with the data here. And this means that companies now can decide what AI agents they want to access their data, on what terms. They could have authentication as a requirement before users can access that. And they can put up all the traditional security that I've spoke about before. Okay, so what we're going to do is, we're going to try and do that now. So we're going to go over here onto our dashboard. We're going to look for our resource, which is our NLWeb MCP here. And what I'm going to do is, I am going to go and I'm going to add a middleware of, I won't put authentication in, I'll go and just put CrowdSec in there. Okay. And we'll be able to then speak directly using our AI agent. Now, so I have this particular resource ready to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the OpenAI. If you go to the platform on OpenAI, they have a playground. And what I'm going to do is, this is newly released with the playground, where they've integrated MCP clients into their chatbot. Now, this hasn't made it to ChatGPT yet, but I expect this is there. It's in the playground now, so they're probably just experimenting with it and seeing how people use it.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at using the access token from the previous time that we ran the OAuth flow. We're going to grab this access token here. We're going to need this now to use the platform in OpenAI. So we're just going to copy this, make sure we get all of it here. And the reason we need this now is because OpenAI and their platform don't support the authorization flow just yet, but I'd imagine that's something that will come pretty soon, and it'll work probably something similar to the MCP inspector. So what we're going to do is just copy the authorization token, and we're going to paste it in here into our platform at OpenAI. Then what we need to do is we need to get the URL of our MCP server. So we're going to put the URL, and remember, this is the MCP server that we used for authentication before, which is our get logged in user. You remember that one. And we just give it a name, a label, and we're going to write a quick prompt here just to say to use the tools before anything else, just for demo purposes, just to make sure we do call the tools. And then once we have that done, we're just going to write in the prompt here, I'm going to find out, does the AI agent now know my email? And I should know this now because my MCP server has been authorized the last time, so it's got the email that I logged in with from before. And it gets this because of the authorization token. So it's sending off the request using the MCP tool. And like all of these MCP tools in their AI agents, they'll always ask for a response. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move forward with the NLWeb MCP. So we're going to now insert this one here, and we're going to give it a label, and also we're going to just give it a blank authorization token because we don't have authorization on for that. And you can see here that all the tools are returned. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to say, what does Kevin Scott know about MCP? And it's going to go and ask the MCP server, which runs on NLWeb, and this is going over secure tunnels into the network. And then it's going to pull out this information, and this information is now put on the screen here. So this is pretty powerful stuff here. It's taking this information from a private repository, and remember, we've controlled the access to this NLWeb installation, and we can apply lots of filtering, IP address filtering. We can even go and filter based on the user agents and deny some agents from having access and allowing other agents from having access. And it even pulls back some media here of Kevin Scott, a picture here. And we also have some articles there from The Verge, from Nilay and The Verge. So hopefully that's given you a good idea. So thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe to get more content like this.